Welcome to Ofofo Studio. My guest for today is Richard Stiennon. Richard is one of the leading cybersecurity researchers in the world. He's probably the only one who I've had the pleasure of knowing. Richard runs a company called IT Harvest. It's a data company where they collate all the research led by him and pass it on to companies who are running marketplaces. And the data is collected from more than 3,800 companies. His posts get thousands of views, hundreds and thousands of impressions. The engagement is insane. I love going through those, and we've used his research extensively for our platform as well. Richard, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure having you on the platform, Richard. I mean, like I said, right, on LinkedIn, there is so much that I use from the post that you send out, but I never really got to properly thank you for it.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad somebody's getting use out of it.
By means of this podcast, I want to share with people what it is that impressed me so much about the kind of research that you've put out so far. So, Richard, I mean, in a nutshell, can you describe what it is that you're doing right now?
Yeah, sure. I am attempting to capture all the data on all the cybersecurity vendors in the world. We're up to 3,860 this morning.
Wow.
And
Mm-hmm.
in that process, we just keep adding new and better data sources. And we recently ingested all cybersecurity products. So that means that our platform is something that security architects and people who choose products can use to get a complete list of all the options before they narrow it down to the ones they want to talk to. And I've been working on this for years and years, but we've only had the platform available for about 2.5 years.
Why did you start this as a problem for you to solve? Like, why did you think that this is something that needs a lot of research around?
Yeah, it goes all the way back to 2000 when I joined Gartner. And
Mm-hmm.
Gartner, before I joined them, Gartner had this very popular product called Gartner Data Quest, which was just a constant feed of technology news and information. When I joined Gartner, I was hoping I could tap into that and use it for my research as an industry analyst. And I discovered that no, I actually couldn't. They actually didn't do research on all the companies. So when I left Gartner, I created IT Harvest to harvest all that data so that I could fill that gap that I thought was missing.
Makes sense. Where do you think, I mean, research-wise, cybersecurity as an industry is? I mean, for all of the other industries, I see there are a lot of papers that come out. There are reports that are published every year. But for cybersecurity, there is definitely a gap. I mean, I get a lot of questions asked by, normally that are asked by a lot of companies that most people don't have answers to. Why do you think that gap exists?
Yeah, I think it's because of the dynamic nature of our industry. Every other technology industry, the only drivers are for lower cost, faster throughput,
Right.
and adding features, right? So data
Exactly.
storage is like that, and ERP systems, healthcare systems, whatever. They just drive to get their products better. In security, we have to do all those things. And we have to respond to a group of attackers who are constantly striving on their own to figure out ways to steal stuff from us
Absolutely.
and cause damage. So that just sets us apart, right? It's almost
Mhm.
like we're in the weapons industry in the middle of a war, right? So that's when
Yeah,
during
yeah.
World War II, for instance, is when the machine gun came into play, and trench diggers and all sorts of new weapon systems developed during the war while
Right.
they're using them and deploying them to the field. That's exactly where we are with cybersecurity.
All right. So, timeline wise, like this year, we are probably like 100 years back when, if you're making that weapons analogy, is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's okay. What
yeah.
do you think? Are there some predictions that you can make? What do you see coming in the future? Just going by that analogy.
Sure. Piece of cake. The attackers will continue to innovate and reinvest their ill-gotten gains. So there's millions, if not billions, flowing into their coffers,
Right.
primarily in Russia. and
Mm-hmm.
they will continue to seek out ways to collect money.
Mm-hmm.
The other major form of attacker, of course, are nation states intelligence
Right.
agencies, and
Mm-hmm.
they are pushing the envelope as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talk of the first group using artificial intelligence. They're not going to do much that we can't keep track of. The
Correct.
second group, China, Russia, and the United States, are investing heavily in artificial intelligence. They are working on automated systems. So now
Mm-hmm.
they can just, a field agent can say, hey, I want to know the pass key to get in this door. And they'll
Wow,
deploy an agent that will hack into the system and open the door for them.
that's scary.
It's gonna be a crazy, crazy world, and we will have to counter that. We, the industry, and
Mm-hmm.
there'll have to be tools in place that can stop our own security apparatus from hacking into our systems.
Absolutely. So, Richard, like a very important point over here is that most of these bad actors or black hat hackers, they tend to share their research. I mean, like, all the findings, they communicate well with each other. Even though, I mean, like, it's all anonymized and everything, like their identities are not out, but there is proof that they are sharing their research with each other. Whereas companies don't tend to do that, right? So
Right.
there's always going to be that gap of them being a little bit ahead, or probably not just a little bit, a lot ahead. What do you think can be done so that new research and new findings are shared between companies, between uh, uh, companies who are not really bad actors, but they want to not be attacked? Basically, what can they do?
Yeah. Yeah. So the economics of it is such that black hat hackers do a lot of sharing in order to gain street cred in their
Yeah,
capabilities,
yeah.
and that leads to different rewards, right? Even if they're not monetary. Defenders and the researchers in defense, when they do that too, right? So bug bounty programs and
Yeah.
finding vulnerabilities certainly do that. But if you have a new technology that's better at stopping ransomware, for instance, you're going to
Hmm.
commercialize that. So you're not going to share it
Absolutely.
freely. Freely, you're going to
Ma-
take it to market, and that's kind of the ecosystem we're in, and it works pretty well, right? The successful tools that are needed right now have a lot of early momentum, get funded, and go on to be big companies. And CrowdStrike's probably the best example, right? They just had a better solution for endpoint
Always.
security.
Yeah. What? Who do you look up to in the space? I mean, like like you just mentioned CrowdStrike in this example, right? Are there any other companies that are companies or organizations or individuals who you look up to in terms of what they're doing within the industry?
Yeah, certainly Jay Chaudhry. I've always
Hmm.
admired his entrepreneurial spirit, and I've
Hmm.
followed him through every single startup that he's done. Even competed with him at his very first startup. He was in Atlanta, I was in Detroit, and we had
Hmm.
competing companies. But I just saw his laser focus, specifically with Zscaler today.
Hmm.
I first talked to him about what he was doing there in 2008, and he has
Hmm.
not changed his message in all the time since then. You'll see him on Squawk Box and television
Wow.
shows, and he still has exact same message. And just that level of focus, I highly admire. As opposed to some leaders that
Hmm.
of very large companies, we won't name names, who just
Hmm.
keep switching their focus, right?
Yeah.
They might be the absolute leader in firewall appliances, but then they hear about cloud stuff and they just jump on that, buy a little company, and then that's all they talk about. And
Right.
then they hear about I don't know, artificial intelligence, and boom, now
Hmm.
they're the
Yeah.
AI security company. And I
Yeah.
do not admire that at all.
All right. So, what is it that you're focused on? What's the problem area? I mean, in addition to getting more data around, like shedding more light on the cybersecurity industry, what
Yep.
other things uh, demand your focus?
Yeah, so I'm trying to solve the problem of how do buyers of security products find the products that they ultimately buy. And for the longest time, they would talk to an industry analyst firm and say, hey, should we buy Oracle or SAP? And
Right.
that was, Gartner had a huge business advising on those two things. And they're pretty much the same thing and just some
Yeah.
nuances, but it's a multi-million-dollar decision and you want to make the right choice. But
Correct.
now in security, there are tens of thousands of products to choose from. And if you use Gartner Magic Quadrants to make that decision, you're only going to see the products from 188 companies when there are
Oh.
3,800 companies. So I
Mm.
believe that the problem we're facing is that the purchasing decision is either made by using a very short list curated by an industry analyst, or you just buy because the salesperson called you up and showed you a
Yeah.
product that you can use, and you just decided to buy it without
Right.
researching the rest of the
Mm.
solutions. And I think, especially for larger companies, they have to be a little more scientific about how they choose products. And if you're going to be scientific at all, you should have all the data in front of you. And that's my goal, is to make that data easy to just surface and be right in front of you.
That makes a lot of sense. But Richard, in this example, we're mostly talking about larger companies, right? I mean, like larger companies have other large companies selling to them. And
Right,
I mean,
right.
the decision could be tough for them, but it's not as difficult, nearly as difficult what it is like for small and medium businesses,
This
right?
is
I
true.
mean, like smaller businesses where like probably the CDO is doubling up as the CISO, or
Right.
like they don't really have a cybersecurity practice built in. It's mostly the tech,
Yep.
it's a side project for the tech team,
So
right?
true.
So
Yep.
what is it that they can do to be more resilient and like be uh,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, you get my point. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, first of all, they should adopt cloud as much as they can
Okay.
and use cloud services that, are reputable and have security. And for their endpoints, if they're not, they should certainly be using Mac computers, MacBooks,
Hmm.
etc.
Yeah.
If they just can't handle that decision and they have to stick with Windows, then they should be using a modern, the latest operating system that has Windows Defender. Okay, now your
Got it.
endpoint's pretty much taken care of.
Yeah.
Um, the next most important thing, of course, is identity. And yes, you should use two-factor authentication wherever possible. But that's getting to the realm of hard to do for a lot of small businesses.
Yeah.
But the most important thing you should do is back up every single thing every single day, right? Because you are going to get hit by ransomware. And
Hmm.
the answer to ransomware is pretty simple. At least half of the ransomware problem is that you just back up from storage. And so you should invest heavily in that ability. So anytime somebody's connected to the network, their system's being backed up. You should have granular ability to restore. So if you lose a particular file, you say, "Oh, let me get the old copy," etc. And that's
Hmm.
table stakes. You should be doing that. We all used to do that all the time. When I first got into when I got out of school, I worked at an automotive seating company, and the
Hmm.
MIS department had
Hmm.
backups that they did every day. When I bought a CAD system, I did backups every single day, and you put them on a tape, and you'd have a Monday tape and a Tuesday tape.
Wow.
Every day of the
Wow.
week would have its own tape, and every week you'd replace it with the new backup.
Hmm.
But at the end of every week, you'd create a weekly backup tape. And at the end of every month, you'd have a monthly backup tape, and you'd store them off site. Somebody would take them home to their house. So if there's a fire
Nice.
at the office, you still get your backup. This is
Hmm.
just so simple, and everybody should do it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact,
All right.
because I just said backup, I have to do it today.
All right. So three things: take backups take backups of everything every day. Be on the
Yep,
cloud and use Mac computers or the latest Windows machine
right.
with the Defender in it.
Yep,
All right. And like but that's still as an end customer, right? Like if it's an organization, like let's say slightly bigger organization where they need like where the need for a firewall is there, like you need to have anti-phishing tools in place, stuff like that. So
Yeah,
what's the next step beyond this? Like you've got
yeah,
like the basics covered. What do you go
right.
for now?
So now you really have to have a handle on authentication. Um,
Yeah.
so you want to use two-factor authentication, and SMS messaging is just fine for most organizations. But at some point, you probably want slightly better than that. Something that is an app on your phone, etc., to allow you to check in.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
you want to isolate if you do have a data center, even if it's a rack in a closet. You don't want it all on the same subnet. You want
Right.
to segment that so that if
Hmm.
somebody does get into one system, it's harder for them to jump into the other systems. Um, and then you can keep going from there, right? You can outsource
Yeah.
to an MSSP, so
Hmm.
they'll help you. They'll deploy firewalls to each of your offices or locations, even home offices if you have them, and they'll monitor them for you and alert them for you. And this is, the moment you hire an MSSP is usually driven by compliance requirement. So one of your
Absolutely.
customers, a bigger company, is going to say, "Hey, where's your logs? We're
Right.
going to audit you." And
Yeah.
that's when you go to an MSSP. You've outsourced logging and monitoring.
Hmm. Right. So you mentioned about helping companies, uh, like the decision making, making the decision making for them easier when they're going about
Right.
choosing from a variety of products. So
Yep.
are there some is there a methodology there, or are there some tips, or are there some is there a checklist? Or how does it work?
Yeah, every company has its own um, desires of what kind of companies they want to work with. So if
Hmm.
you had a list, for instance, right now, if you were buying a SIM product, there are
Hmm.
204 SIM products. So
Hmm.
security event and information management for logging and monitoring network and endpoint activity. So where would you start? You might say, well, I only want to buy locally. So companies that
Right.
are headquarters in my country or even in my city, that might be a choice. It's not necessarily, right? Because if you're outside the United States, you probably are
Hmm.
going to look at the big vendors that are headquartered in the United States.
Right.
So for a SIM product, that's going to be Splunk, now owned by Cisco,
Right.
and man, you're going to use those criteria to narrow it down to 4 or 5. You're going to talk to or look at the website for those 4 or 5, decide which ones have the features, call them up, ask them about pricing, um, find the ones that you can afford, and then do proof of concept to make sure you can use it and it works as advertised. That's the process.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
It's
Okay.
the ideal process. Now, in
Yeah. Yeah.
reality, in
Hmm.
in much of the world, in Japan and Europe especially, you just call up your value-added reseller and you say,
Hmm.
"Hey, we need a new endpoint security solution," and they say, "Hey, you should use Sentinel-1," and you're done because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
tested it and you trust them, right?
Right. Right. So, okay, another thing that I wanted to ask you, Richard, is how do you create more awareness about cybersecurity and privacy, like having that within the culture among the masses? Because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
thing is, like, people do get affected by it, like they get scammed, or like a company could have a ransomware attack or something, but it's almost always too late, and they tend to not share the information like about okay, the reason could be it's
right.
embarrassing, or it could be like
Yeah,
really secure. uh, so what can be done to create more awareness among the masses, like about among people who are not from the industry?
sure. Uh, so the only thing that works
Hmm.
is let the hackers do it for you. So
Yeah.
it says we cannot reach them, right? So I've been writing and blogging about security practices for 25 years.
Wow.
And I finally realized that the people who need to hear what I'm saying do
Hmm.
not get online and read blogs about security. So they never see
Yeah.
my advice.
Right.
So it's worthless. It's pointless. It's ridiculous for here in the US. We've got a government agency called CISA, and
Uh-huh.
all
Yeah.
they do is blab about how you should patch your systems because there's a new vulnerability. The people who need
Yeah.
to hear that are not listening. They are not going
Right.
to hear you say that. Now,
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
other hand, you're not listening. You're focused on, for instance, the printer for my book got hit by ransomware last year and shut
Wow.
down for 3 weeks due to that. They,
Mhm.
obviously didn't read my book. They just print it. Um,
Mhm.
Guaranteed they have excellent security now, right? They were down
Yeah,
for three
yeah,
weeks. Significant
yeah.
pain for them. They probably hired
Wow.
somebody to do security, which they didn't
Mhm.
have before.
Mhm.
So, what better learning experience could there be than getting hacked? Now,
Yeah.
for two-factor authentication, the best is Facebook, right? If you
Mhm.
don't have it turned on Facebook, your account gets taken over, and all of a sudden
Mhm.
you're selling Ray-Ban sunglasses to all of your
Yeah,
friends,
yeah.
and you
Right.
have to reach out over a different channel, your email, and say,
Yeah,
"I
yeah.
sorry, I got hacked." Just ignore those messages. You learned
Right.
your lesson. You should have learned your lesson, and
Yeah.
you talk to Facebook. They said, "Well, just turn on two-factor authentication."
Mhm.
And then you don't do it for Twitter because
Yeah.
you just won't learn until your Twitter accounts start selling Ray-Ban sunglasses. Then you
Right,
do it
right.
for Twitter. It's just like
Mhm.
one step at a time. You have to learn the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. Probably like suffering is the only way to learn that.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
you have to go through an experience like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah. It would take. I don't know if I've ever met anybody who said, "Hey, our competitor got hit by ransomware, so we invested heavily in security." That
In an ideal
never
world.
happens.
Like never
Never
happens.
happens.
Yeah. Right, right, right. It's almost always like, we get a lot of requests as well. I mean, like, it's almost always people who are looking for some compliance practices because, like,
Yep.
some customer of theirs, some bank asks for, like, some compliance in place, that just like you just said.
Yep. Yep.
None of them are
Which
proactive about it. Like,
Yeah, which
yeah,
brings up a point, right? The compliance requirement or a customer saying we only deal with ISO compliant companies will
exactly.
drive
Yeah,
you towards doing more. You might not take it seriously. You might just go through the steps and do the paperwork.
right.
But the one I'm finding that's finally having an impact on SMBs are insurance companies. Because if
Yeah.
there's one thing a small company or a mid-sized company understands, it's insurance, and
Hmm.
their insurance brokers who are already insuring them against people slipping and falling on the floor will say, "Hey, do you have cyber insurance?" And they'll say, "What's that?" And they
Hmm.
explain it. They actually are selling it, and they say, "Oh, and by the way, it's going to cost you $1,000 a month unless you use these products or use this MSSP to do more security for you, and then it's only 500 a month because you just reduce the
Ah,
risk of an attack." And
correct.
that's probably the biggest impact on SMBs in my career that I've seen.
Hmm. There's this very interesting company that I was talking to. So they're into cyber insurance as well. They call Mitigata.
Okay.
And they have cyber insurance plans for individuals as well. And they start for as low
Wow.
as $2 a year. Yeah.
Nice.
That barely covers anything. Like, anything of note, if you want to get from their platform, that's, I think, about
Right.
like $200, $200 a year, something like that. But like the premiums, the insurance premiums, they go down if you have a lot of safeguards in place. Like, they work with a
Right.
lot of cybersecurity companies too, and it helps both parties, right? I mean, if people are
Yep.
secure, these guys are also getting business, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
All right, Richard. I'll shift gears a little bit. So you said that you've been doing this research for 24 years now, 25 years, close to 25 years, right?
Yep. Right. Yeah.
What were you doing before that?
So while I was I had been at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and
Okay.
then it was during the dot-com boom,
Uh-huh.
and one of our customers was a famous basketball player, and
Mm-hmm.
he was getting into an e-commerce solution for selling gift certificates. And I
Okay.
was PricewaterhouseCoopers expert on e-commerce, so I got sucked into it, and I ended up running that gift certificate business online
Mm-hmm.
for the 2 years before I joined Gartner.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then from when did you think that it was something that you wanted to pursue by yourself and not have like a big company to help you with it?
Yeah, so I joined Gartner, at the dot-com crash, the bust,
Yeah.
And I assumed that I'd be out in 6 months, right? Because I'm an
Yeah.
entrepreneur at heart, and I have to be doing something new all the time. But I stayed 4 years, as long as I've ever held a job. So when the economy started to recover for tech, I joined
Mhm.
the first company that offered me a job, which was WebRoot Software,
Okay.
and I stayed there long enough for my non-compete with Gartner to expire, and then started IT Harvest.
Okay. What year was this?
2005.
2005. Oh, so you've been running this for like 20 years now almost.
Coming up on, yeah, we're coming up on our 19th anniversary in August. So yeah,
How cool is that? Like, and
yeah.
how big is your team, Richard? I can't imagine doing all of this by yourself.
Oh no, I'm not. Yeah, so we've got let's see, 8 people around the world, and then we've got a team in India of 11 that do a lot of data collection for us.
Nice, nice. How are the responsibilities divided among the people, and what are the competencies within your team?
Yes. Oh, so obviously there's a real strong divide between my co-founder Maximilian, who does all of he creates the app,
Hmm.
and he does it all, and
Hmm.
in me, right? Because I'm managing the
Hmm.
company and I'm still doing the research and categorizing every new company we find. And then I've got a cadre of 3 researchers that gather different information, and then
Hmm.
a sales guy, of course, um,
Hmm.
and then the team in India. So yeah,
Perfect.
pretty standard, right?
Yeah,
Tech
yeah.
and development,
Hmm.
management, sales, research.
Makes sense. Makes sense. What else is on the future roadmap for ID Harvest? Is there
Oh
anything
gosh,
that we can be excited about?
yeah, I'll say. So it so I attended a conference, and somebody speaking
Hmm.
there said that he and the company he worked at was a very respected company. We're 98% confident that large language models would continue to increase in intelligence at the same rate they have been for the next 3 years. And that just
Hmm.
opened up my mind to the possibilities, because the rate that these LLMs have
Yeah.
been increasing in intelligence is 10x every year.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that means that 12 months from now, GPT-5 will be out, and it'll be 10 times as intelligent as what we have today.
It's hard
And
to
12
imagine.
months after that, it'll be 100 times as intelligent, which is already impossible to imagine, right? We're
Yeah.
still trying to figure out how we can use and profit from using OpenAI's GPT and Claude, all of them. And now we're talking about something that's going to hit us that will be 10 times as powerful. So we are going to create a synthetic industry analyst. And so you'll
Okay.
be able to make an appointment for a call, just like you would with Forrester or Gartner, and you'll be
Hmm.
talking to an AI, and it'll be
Hmm.
full video and audio,
Hmm.
and you'll explain your situation. You might upload some files that show your current security stack, and
Hmm.
now you'll be talking to an AI that knows everything in the world about the security industry
Wow.
and has it, can instantly recall it. So it's like me with perfect recall, and
Yeah.
that's just going to be mind blowing. It'll be so valuable to people.
Absolutely. But you know what? You know what scares me? Like the point that you made earlier, that
Uh-huh.
even though there's going to be a very intelligent researcher that I can always refer to, there's also going to be a very intelligent hacker. Like that's the other side of the coin.
Yeah, but business models are different, right? So
Right.
the
Hmm.
hacker is going to be using AI to discover new hacking techniques.
Hmm.
Um, we're going to be using AI to, just reinvent an entire existing industry that's worth $10 billion. So, slight
Richard,
difference.
do you think? I mean, do you think a possibility? Have you watched the Terminator? You must have, right?
Of course, of course.
The Matrix, all those movies with that theme of
Yep.
machines taking over, right? Do you
Yep.
think that could happen in our lifetime?
Not in our lifetime, no.
No.
Um,
Okay.
and then in during our lifetime, of course, my lifetime's shorter than yours.
Uh,
But during our lifetime, we'll we'll have better visibility to where this is going and
Hmm.
develop the controls to prevent that from happening, right? There's very, very little connection between these AIs and the physical world, right? They,
Hmm. Yeah,
they
yeah,
can barely they can barely see, um, they can barely hear, and
right.
they're not ready to understand the world that we live in, right?
But they're going to be learning exponentially, right? Like, what if
Absolutely.
their understanding gets, I mean, it's beyond human comprehension? What do you do
Oh
then?
yeah, yeah. That'll be so well. We hope they're benign, um, and
Yeah.
they'll answer some philosophical questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's kill switches that we need, except that we're going to rely on these, right? They'll run the economy very,
Hmm.
very quickly. So
Yeah.
it'd be really hard to kill them off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very heavy topic. I'll change the course of the conversation, Richard. What do you do to decompress?
So I've recently taken up horseback riding again. So
Oh,
um,
wow.
that that really serves to decompress me because there's not thinking about anything else other than staying on top of that horse.
Why was that gap? You said that you took it up again. So why did you
Yeah.
pause?
Well, so my last lesson before this was 40 years ago.
Oh,
So, but in the meantime,
for,
I go horseback riding
yeah.
on trails when I'm traveling. We were last year we went horseback riding in Tuscany.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and
Wow.
but that's just trail riding. It's anybody can do that.
I don't think so. Not a lot of people can, but yeah. I see a lot of books in the background, Richard. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
what's on your bedside table right now? What are you reading?
I'm reading one of the last novels for me to read, written by C.S. Forester. So
Oh,
C.S. Forester, of course, wrote the Hornblower series and a bunch of other
right.
novels. And my favorite genre, which
Classic.
is
Yeah.
mid-century adventure stories, I think is how you
Okay.
classify them. So, but I've also got a stack of books this tall, covering all sorts of different topics.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So, I mean,
Yep.
are you into movies, Richard? Do you like movies?
I, I love movies. Yeah.
What kind?
Um, well, let's see. I can tell you my favorite trope is a pill that makes you smarter.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
any
I've seen a bunch of
movie about that. So Limitless
Limitless. Yeah,
is
yeah,
one
yeah.
of my favorite movies. Yeah.
Yeah. I
And of
love that
course,
movie.
I like. It's an amazing movie. I'll watch that over and over again, just for the scene where he first pops the pill in, and whenever
Right.
they change the lighting, because
The
that
lighting.
is what
Yeah.
it feels like. Yeah,
Right.
when your brain
Right.
is
Right.
on fire with something, that's just how it feels.
Okay.
We don't all get that very often.
Let's say you get
And of
that
course,
pill. Yeah. Let's say you
yeah,
get
oh
like
yeah,
hypothetical exercise. Let's say you get
yep,
that the pill, that NZD for a day, right? And
yep.
you can use it
Ooh,
to accomplish one task. What would you do?
I would probably do the exact same thing that Cooper
Study the
did.
markets?
Cooper's
Yeah.
character did. No, I
Hmm.
would write a novel.
Ah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He's finishing a novel. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I could at least write. Oh, could I write a novel? I can write 10,000 words in a day. If I had
Wow.
NZT, I could probably write 20 or 30,000 words. So
Mm.
that'd be enough to I can fill in the gaps later.
You can write 10,000 words in a day?
I have
That's
in
a
the
lot of
past,
writing.
yeah, yeah. I know. I beat PG Woodhouse. So
I know. Yeah. All right. Richard, how can people reach out to you? How can
yeah, best
they ask
best
you the
way is
same
find me.
questions that I did?
Find me on LinkedIn. Just Stiennon on LinkedIn, so it's easy to find. And
Hmm.
I'll accept your connection request, and after that, it's easy to find my Substack at steenon.substack.com or IT
Hmm.
Harvest, it-harvest.com.
All the links will be included in the description. Right.
Awesome.
Richard, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. I,
Thank
I
you, on
would
God.
I would want another episode, when things
Fine.
have changed, the state of the industry has changed. I want your opinions from time to time.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks so much.
Thanks.